Okie dokie. Happy Wednesday. Woo! It's Wednesday. So yesterday, which was Tuesday, we started our King Tut CSI. So yesterday you watched 3 videos, which kind of gave you some background information. And we started on what do we do? We did the introduction and we did document 1 and document 2. I'm going to share my screen. So again, we are going to be looking at the death of King Tut. Was he murdered? Was it an accident? What is it, a disease? That's what we're going to discover a whole bunch of evidence, and then you're going to decide what the evidence shows. So yesterday we did document 1 and document 2. I'm actually going to erase these because we're going to need the room. Actually, we'll just put them together. We'll just move it over here because we're going to need the room. So we did document 1 and document 2. Today we're going to do document 3, document 4, document 5, and document 6. We're going to do them together. So again, was King Tut murdered? We learned yesterday he became Pharaoh of Egypt when he was only 8 years old. He died when he was 18, 19, very unexpectedly. He remained hidden for almost 3,000 years, which was a good thing because that means tomb robbers were not able to steal his stuff. And so when he was found by archaeologists, everything was as it had been when he had been buried 3,000 years ago. So in document 2, we kind of got some background information on what Egypt was like when King Tut became Pharaoh. It wasn't in a really good place because King Tut's father had decided that he was only going to let Egypt worship one god, which was a huge change. He stopped putting money in the military, he stopped putting money into the religious temples, and he moved the capital to some far off place. So Egypt was not happy when Tut's father died. And then you have this 8-year-old and you're like, hey, good job being Pharaoh. Oh my gosh, my email, I always forget to close that. Let me close my email. Hey, good job being Pharaoh. You're only 8 and things are really bad. Good luck. All right, so today we're gonna start with document 3, and we are going to, again, start with our up and R, triple R. So first we're gonna start by highlighting any titles or headers. So for this one, it is, how could a 9-year-old actually rule? It's a good question. Number of paragraphs, 1. And again, we number paragraphs. So when you tell me you found information, you can tell me what paragraph you found your information. You're not like, Miss Morris, I just made it up. I just made it up, Miss Morris. Or I just pulled it out of my fanny, Miss Morris. Nope, you actually got it from the text. And there's no extras to read. There's just the text on this one. So I'm going to start off reading it. Remember, any notes I make, you make. Again, you're going to be turning this in next week. All right. So paragraph 1. When Tutankhamun became the pharaoh in 1332, he was welcomed into a very hostile Egypt. So hostile, it was angry. It was angry. Let's see if we can type that. Hostile, it was not good. It was very angry, like people were not happy. The priests were shaken by his father's disrespect towards Egyptian gods. Akhenaten's neglect of the military had left the army weaker than ever. How could a 9-year-old child who lacked the understanding and wisdom to run an empire actually do it? This, coupled with the mess in which Akhenaten left Egypt, meant that King Tut relied on more experienced men to assist in his rule. Evidence suggests that King Tut received guidance from 2 men. So 2 men helped him. The first man you will investigate was one of his father's former advisor named Ai. And I don't know if you remember yesterday in the Sherman and Mr. Peabody, they talked about Ai. Could he have been responsible for King Tut's ultimate death? Paragraph 2. When King Tut took the throne, there was no other surviving blood relatives. And we talked about that. If there's no other blood relatives, the dynasty ends. This meant that King Tut needed to have a son before his death, or else Egypt would be left without a legitimate pharaoh, like someone who's actually blood, so it automatically goes to them. If this happened, someone who understood the workings of the position, likely an elder advisor, would have assumed the position. It is believed that I understood the situation that surrounded King Tut when he became pharaoh. How do we know this? Well, I did, in fact, become pharaoh after Tut's demise, death. It is possible that the elder advisor desired the throne so much that he would have killed for it. Oh, is it? It certainly is possible. In fact, a piece of evidence was discovered in 1931 that makes it even more difficult to prove Ai's innocence. A ring was discovered in Cairo that showed Ai married King Tut's wife. I can never say her name. We're going to say Akhenaten, shortly after her husband's untimely death. Untimely means wasn't expected. Paragraph 3. Could the two have worked together to kill King Tut? Not likely. Research shows that Ai may have forced Akhenaten to marry him to make his rule of Egypt more legitimate. So he's like, dude, I'm going to take over. Oh, I'm going to make Tut's wife my wife. So then people will be like, oh, it's totally okay then. Why do researchers believe this? Stone tablets, which date to this period in Egypt's history, reveal a possible last chance attempt by Tut's wife, Akhenaten, to save the kingdom. These tablets were written to the Hittites, a longtime Egyptian enemy, and shows that Akhenaten pleaded, she's like, please, for the Hittites to send a prince for her to marry. So if they would have done this, I mean, that's pretty desperate. She's going to her Egypt's enemy, and she's like, please, 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 send me a prince. That way the prince and I can rule Egypt. Possibly to keep Ai from the throne. There's one major problem with this theory. If Ai did in fact kill King Tut, why did he wait so long? Tut was in power for 9 years before his death. That's a good question, right? You have to always ask these questions. You can't be like, oh, okay, it was him, it was him. It is a good question. Why did he wait 9 years? All right, let's go look at the questions. Number 1, why do many believe King Tut relied closely on his advisors? Well, it talks about that in paragraph 1. He was 9 years old and Egypt was in a mess. I mean, 9 years old running an entire country. So we're going to go back to our, right here, our answer document. We're going to do little bullets. Tut was only 9. Egypt was in chaos. It was a mess. It was a mess, hot mess. People are angry, people are upset. I mean, it was not good. And then we got that from paragraph 1. Yeah, Egypt was a hot mess. It wasn't good. All right, question number 2 says, we have to go back and forth. The idea that I had something to do with the possible murder of King Tut is intriguing. Interesting. Interesting. If I had a beard, I could go, interesting. Or if I had a mustache. What evidence exists that makes I seem guilty? Well, I would think it's in paragraph 2. When, number 1, he became pharaoh after Tut's demise, his death, and he tried to force Tut's wife to become his wife. Kind of suspicious. I had nothing to do with his death. I'm pharaoh. His wife marries me. We're like, what? That's a little weird. All right, so let's do our little notes. So what do we say? He became pharaoh after Tut died. He forced Tut's wife to marry him. So again, none of them look real good. None of them look real good. All right, question 3. See, it's going pretty fast, actually. Oh, I hope you guys just yelled at me and said, Miss Morris, you did not tell us where you got the answer. That was paragraph 2. Bad Miss Morris. Bad Miss Morris. All right, question number 3. I'm just going to read it. Oh, no, we'll go back to it. Okay, assume that I is guilty of this crime. What can explain why he waited so long to do it? After all, by waiting 9 years, I would have given Tut time to father a son or several sons, and he would have given the people enough time to forget the resentment, forget why they're angry that they felt towards Tut's father. So why did he wait so long? This is an opinion. You are allowed to put whatever opinion you believe as long as it makes sense. Can't put like, oh, I think he waited so long because dinosaurs invaded Egypt. So my opinion, you can go with me, you can do your own. There's a couple things. I think he waited, number one, so people weren't suspicious. It would look weird if King Tut becomes Pharaoh and then like a week later he dies and I's like, oh, look at me, I'm Pharaoh. People would have been like, really, buddy? That's a little suspicious. Also, it was very hard to have children, especially among the royals, because they were having kids with people they're related to, and we know that doesn't go so well. So maybe he thought the chances of having a son were kind of small. So possibly the chance of Tut having a healthy son was small. Because again, a lot of the royals had a hard time having children because, again, you have children with your relatives and it doesn't go very well. All right. So if you don't have this written down, you can pause it. That's why I like doing this on the video. I'm going to kind of move this over because we're going to get to document 4. Pause it so you can write this down and then unpause it. And we're going to go on to document 4. Document 4 up in our triple R. Document 4 up in our. All right. First off, highlight any titles or headers. I just said Heather. And it, again, has the same title. How could a 9-year-old actually rule? But we're going to get new information. We're going to number our paragraphs. I'm not making a stupid prediction because we know this is about King Tut. And then any extras, any graphics, any pictures? Nope, we just have the text and some questions. All right, so document 4, I'm going to start reading. How could a 9-year-old actually rule? Paragraph 1. While there is certainly a good case against Pharaoh Akhenaten's former advisor Ai for King Tut's murder, there is another person who must be investigated, a military general named Horemheb. It is believed by many scholars that Horemheb guided King Tut in his decision-making when he ascended to the throne, when he, became Pharaoh, came to the throne as a child. Throughout his 9-year rule, it is likely that Tut gained more confidence in this powerful role, understood what was expected of him, and came to realize what needed to be done on a day-to-day basis. And they do actually show that it seems like even though Tut was young, as he became, 9, 10, 11, 12, he was getting more confidence. He was doing a good job, which is kind of crazy. Think how young he is. It is possible that Tut would one day no longer need Horemheb. You betcha. It's going to get to the point and be like, deuces. I got this. Many researchers believe that as King Tut became more independent, he relied on Horemheb less and less, and this may have drawn the ire. And ire means like anger. He might have been angry. Okay, again, I write it, you write it. Of the military general. Paragraph 2. After Tut died, I ruled the empire for 4 years until his death. But guess what? Guess who ruled after I? You guessed it, Horemheb. It is very easy to see Horemheb's disgust towards the young king. Horemheb made every attempt during his rule to erase all evidence of Tut and his father Akhenaten. He restored the traditional Egyptian religious practice of polytheism, that is worshiping many gods. He abandoned the capital built by Akhenaten like far away and returned to the historic capital of Memphis. And he even had King Tut's name removed from several significant temples and monuments and replaced with his own. That's a little weird, right? Oh, look, there's my little Brucey Bruce. Paragraph 3. Could I and Horemheb have worked together to conspire against the young pharaoh? Possibly. In fact, if you couple Horemheb's actions as pharaoh with Ai's motive for murder and the fact that he assumed the position immediately after Tut died, it certainly seems possible that the two work together. Oh, and do you remember the Hittite prince for whom Akhenaten, which was Tut's wife, pleaded with their enemy to send? He never made it to Egypt. It is likely that Horemheb, is it likely that Horemheb, a military general who spent his entire life fighting off the Hittites, would have welcomed a Hittite pharaoh? Probably not. In fact, a scenario where I and Horemheb conspired to seize throne now seems more and more likely. But I'll let you decide, detective. So again, they are providing us with evidence, but it's also their opinion. Okay, so we have to make sure we're pulling out the evidence and we're not like, oh, okay, document 4, it was them. We have to look at every piece of evidence before we make our final decision. So question 1 is, what role did Horemheb hold in the administration? Oh, sorry. That was in paragraph 1, and he was a military leader for Tut and his father. Okay, so we're gonna go to document 4. He was a military leader, or military advisor, I apologize, leader for Tut and his father. And that was in paragraph 1. All right, number 2 says, wrong paragraph, document 4. Number 2 says, why do some researchers point their finger to Horemheb as the one responsible for King Tut's death? Again, a couple of things. First off, he became pharaoh right after I died. And why was he trying to erase King Tut's memory? Why was he trying to get rid of all evidence of Tut? That seems weird. And replace it with his own. So it's like, oh no, King Tut, he never existed. So that seems weird to me. And that, I mean, it does make you go, what? And that was in paragraph 2. So we're gonna put, let me spell his right name, was pharaoh after I died. Also, he tried to erase all memory and records of both Tut and his father. So again, why is he doing that? That's a little weird. Why are you trying to get rid of the evidence? That's odd. All right, paragraph 3, or question 3, which I'm going to let you answer because it's your opinion and I'm genuinely curious. It says, at this point in your investigation, who do you think is to blame? I, Horemheb, or both? Okay, this is your opinion, but you have to tell me why you think that. You can't just put I. Why I? Okay, you need to actually give me why you think that. So for number 3, you're gonna write it on your answer document. If you didn't have enough time, because I know I go kind of fast, good thing about the video, you can pause it, make sure you have everything written down. And now we're going on to document 5. 5? Up in our triple R, but we're not gonna predict, because again, it's all about King Tut. Okay, so this is kind of cool. All right, so first we're gonna highlight the title. What can King Tut's x-rays tell us? And then we have a little extra. In 1968, x-rays were taken of King Tut's mummified corpse. Here are 2 images of his skull. Examine the images below and answer the corresponding questions. Okay, so looking at the skull, I know it's kind of hard to see, but all along here you can see it's smooth, except right here. This looks like a giant crack in the dome. So let's go on and see what our questions are. First, examine the x-ray on the left. Could you find an injury? Look closely and circle. We did. Right, oops, I went the wrong way. Right here, looks, most people don't have giant cracks in their skull. So that, you're gonna circle that injury right there. I know it's kind of hard to see on your paper, but kind of just like I did right there. Question number 2 says, the x-ray on the right is pointing out an area on the back and bottom of Tut's skull. The large white part is Tut's skull. Notice the smaller white part that the arrow is pointing to. The separation between these 2 right areas indicate an injury to Tut's skull. What could have caused the injury in both of these images? So there's an injury, it looks like here on the top, and then apparently there's an injury right here. So there's two injuries. So what could have caused those injuries to the back of his head? Again, we're just guessing, but guesses that make sense. Hypotheses, if you will. You're not gonna be like, oh, like a giant shark came and hit him on the head. Okay, so how do people generally get cracks or fractures or skull damage? Well, either someone hit him, or he could have fallen. And if he hit rocks or something, I mean, it could have caused those fractures. So it could have been both. Could have been falling, or it could have been on purpose. All right. Question two. Oh, wait, that was question 2. Okay, but anyway. All right. So question 3, do you think the injury was fatal? Meaning, do you think this injury killed King Tut? Why or why not? Your opinion. You get to say what you want. That's a pretty big skull fracture. So I'm going to have to say possibly it did kill him, because most people, especially when there wasn't medicine like there was now and surgery, giant crack in your dome doesn't usually bode well. It's not usually a good thing. So I'm going to say probably, major crack in skull. Seems pretty big. It seems pretty big. I don't want that kind of crack in my skull. All right, and then the last one, the last question for document 5 says, assume that King Tut was not murdered. All right, so let's look at it from the other perspective. Let's say he wasn't murdered. Give at least 2 other explanations to account for these injuries. So how could these injuries have happened if it wasn't someone hitting him on the head? Well, again, we talked about it. He could have fallen and hit his head, right? Especially rock, you hit your head on rock or whatever, it's gonna cause some major damage. Fall downstairs, or maybe something fell on his head. It's a dangerous time. So he could have fallen, or something could have fallen on his head. So those are 2 possibilities. Again, not sure, but it's a possibility. All right. Don't have to worry about additional notes. I'm not worried about that. Actually, let's now give me back, and we're almost done. We're on our last document for today. And again, you better be making all the notes that I'm making. All right, document 6. Here we go. Last one for today. Okay, up in our highlight the title and any headers. There's only one title. Was it an illness that killed the king? So again, now we have more theories. First, we have murder. Hit on the back of the head, could have been murder, could have been accident. And now they're introducing illness. All right, we're going to number of paragraphs. 1, 2, 3. And then are there any extras that we need to read? Pictures? Nope, just the text or the questions. All right, document 6. Got my notes here. Paragraph 1. At this point in your investigation, you should have a fairly good understanding of the life of Egypt's youngest pharaoh, King Tut. While it certainly seems that both I and Horemheb had something to gain by Tut's demise being his death, it is possible that Tut died from natural factors. Or is it possible? Sorry. Considering that King Tut died when he was only 19 years old, this seems rather unlikely. But when you factor in the life expectancy for ancient Egyptians was only 33 years old, this does not seem so far-fetched. So it's not like today when a 19-year-old dies, you're like, oh my gosh, he had his whole life ahead of you. In Egypt, 19, you only have a few years left. Like they weren't living till 60 or 70. Still though, the age at which King Tut died would be like someone today dying at the age of 46, still kind of young. I mean, you're kind of like, that's weird. When this tragedy happens today, it is only normal and natural to assume that something caused it, whether it be a car accident, an ongoing illness, or even murder. Again, most 46-year-olds aren't dying. And when it does happen, it's generally because of illness or murder. So, is there evidence that shows the boy King was ill? Paragraph 2. Modern scientists have conducted a variety of DNA tests and scans on the remains of King Tut and his close relatives. These tests have revealed something interesting to the thousands of Tut researchers who are looking for clues to explain his death. King Tut suffered from disease known as avascular bone necrosis. This condition caused the bone to be deprived of their necessary blood supply, which eventually leads to a weakening or even destruction of an area of bone. So he had this disease. So if, like, let's say his arm bone wasn't getting the blood supply it needed, it would eventually weaken and then possibly even like fall apart. So not good. However, scientists note that the bone condition would not have caused Tut's death by itself, but it could have killed him if other factors such as his infection were involved. So he already had these weakening bones. If he then got an infection, the two combined could have killed him. That's what scientists are saying. Paragraph 3. Interesting enough, the scientists discovered that Tut, along with 3 of his close relatives, also suffered from a malaria infection at the time of his death. Many researchers believe that the bone condition coupled with malaria was, but again, they're not saying 100%, but they're saying this was most likely the cause of death of Tutankhamun. Most likely. Again, not 100% proven. There's just all this evidence that we're looking at. But still, people live with malaria all the time. Does this prove how King Tut died? No, it does not. Nevertheless, researchers are convinced that the king's illness had a negative impact on his life due to the large number of canes and walking sticks that were found within his tomb, so where he was buried. And I've said this before, but I don't remember. When they buried pharaohs, they buried them with everything they would think they would need in the afterlife. So if they buried him with canes, and a lot of canes, they probably believed he would need it in the afterlife. So, I mean, obviously he needed them in life. So let's look at our questions. Number 1, look, only 2 questions. What evidence exists that King Tut died from an illness? And it shows in paragraph 2 that DNA scans show he had a bone condition, and in paragraph 3, he had a malaria infection. So that was in paragraph 2 and 3. So we're gonna go to, where are we? Document 6. So DNA scans, what does it show? Show bone disease and DISEA and malaria. And that was in paragraph 2 and 3. Okay, we got it in both. The bone disease was in paragraph 2 and the bone disease was in paragraph 3. Actually, let's just move that down. It looks kind of weird. Okay, question number 2. Question number 2. Look, we're almost done. Let's assume that Tut died from his medical condition. How can you explain the x-rays you analyzed on the last page? So remember, the bone disease causes bones to become weak, which means they're really, really susceptible to breaking. It would not take much. Like there is people today who have this disease where if you like touch them, their bone breaks. So that actually happens. So if Tut did have this disease, he could have easily just bonked his head. And even though for anyone else, it wouldn't have been a big deal, because his bones were so weakened, it could have caused that major fracture that eventually led to his death. Again, it could have been an accident. With this bone disease, I mean, he could have barely knocked his head and anyone else would have been like, oh, like me. Remember, I told you my little dome, my little hit right there. I can't see it. And right there. I complain around, but it's not really a big deal, right? I'm not going to die. However, if I was Tut and I had a weakened bone disease and my head got whacked, I could die. So it's a possibility. Again, all of these are possibilities. You are going to have to decide once you look at all the evidence, what you think actually has the most evidence to support cause of death. All right, so we're going to say, since bone disease weakened his bones, a small hit on his head could have caused major damage, right? Major damage, like enough damage to kill him. But again, we don't know. This is all just evidence we're compiling. So at this point, you should have documents 1, documents 2, document 3, document 4, document 5, and document 6 done. All right. Tomorrow, we are going to be looking at documents 7 and 8. Document 7, oops, I passed it. Document 7 talks about what is the modern day belief, because again, they've done continual research. And then, look, not very long, only a paragraph. And we got some x-rays to look at. And then document 8 is, again, some more of what modern day theories. And again, beliefs. Okay, notice it doesn't say a belief or it's what they believe, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's 100%. It's just, okay, now they believe this. Based on the evidence, now they believe this. Oh, wait, there's more evidence. Okay, now we believe this. Please, that's what I want you guys to remember when you're reading about history and about even current events, what's going on today. Just because someone says it or prints it does not mean that's it. Okay, I want you guys to question, like, why did they say that? What is their evidence? All right, I know you're probably like, Miss Morris, enough. All right, so I did this video really early this morning because I was here last night until 6 doing the video. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do my video. So it's actually only 8:46 and I got my video done. All right, let me know if you have any questions. Email me, text me, Teams. But as of the end of this video, you should have documents 1 through 6 done. Tomorrow, we're going to work on documents 7 and 8, and we're going to work on our bucketing. Okay, we're going to figure out where we're going to put our evidence. I think we'll actually have 3 buckets this time because we have 3 theories. We have murdered or not murdered. Actually, only 2. Murdered, not murdered. Murder, not murdered. All right. So kind of start thinking about that. How are you going to say after we look at all the evidence, how did he die? All right. Make good choices, be good people. Tell everyone I'm your favorite, especially if I have a brain tumor from hitting my head. Ooh, not a brain tumor. Maybe I have a brain fracture like King Tut. See, Miss Bell made fun of me. But it could be a fracture. All right. I love you. I miss you. Tell everyone I'm your favorite, even if I'm not. See you tomorrow.